What is it that us artists have in common? Well, we're here to find out. This is Red and Yellow Make Ginger.
Yeah, well, it did kind of start as an off-the-cuff thing. I honestly wasn't expecting to get even to 100 days. But really, there are a lot of things going on at one time in my life. We're talking end of 2021 now. A lot of stuff in my personal life, and it came down to just a feeling of not really having any direction, not really knowing where I wanted to go with my life. I've been doing the podcast with Joe, the Froe show, which we ended end of last year, and I've been doing that for a while. So I'd already been like maintaining some form of creativity, but it was kind of coming to a head where I just had to make a decision of, all right, am I actually going to seriously pursue this? Is this going to be something that I'm going to throw myself at, or am I going to just go find another path and do something else? And so really the vlog started as a way for me to not only prove to myself that I had the ability and the confidence to actually really push myself to do something that difficult, but it was also a way for me to improve really quickly as a filmmaker and as a content creator without really needing to think about it too much. It was kind of like my own way of hacking the 10,000 hour rule, basically. I just wanted to get as much knowledge as quickly as possible, and it seemed to me that doing a daily vlog was the best way of doing that. And obviously those probably the first 50 episodes were very clearly influenced by Casey Neistat. I'd gone on a binge through like November and December of just his videos. Like I watched every vlog from start to finish of his daily vlog. And so obviously that was a big catalyst for me being like, all right, this is something that I'm going to actually properly pursue. And so that was kind of that big moment of like, all right, I'm going to start doing this, and then I'm going to build my own style as I go. And I was very conscious of that, of being like, all right, what am I going to push myself? What am I going to change this week? What's something that I'm going to grow? What's an area that I'm going to grow in? And that's something that I talked about a lot, both within the podcast and within the vlog, is the difference between just straight copying and imitation versus imitation for the sake of growth and expanding on the ideas that someone has put forth in their art. So that was something I was very conscious of throughout the course of the daily vlog, but we'll get to that later, I'm sure. But that's pretty much how it started. It was a case of me wanting to get better at filmmaking and at content creation just as quickly as possible.
And what did that routine look like? Because I've tried daily and I just get stressed out by the 7th day usually. So did you always feel like you had to film something that day? I mean, obviously you had to, but was that your waking moment, or were you able to sort of calmly go into it knowing you would film something, having like an event on the horizon? There's one where you filmed the was it I can't remember what you call it, when you did these stars in the sky, and you knew you had that coming up.
The astrophotography night. Well, I think the biggest thing for me throughout doing the daily vlog was really accepting that I had no expectations for myself. If the vlog was going to be 30 seconds of me looking at the camera and being like, hey, I have nothing today, I'm sorry, like that's fine, because that was the point of the vlog was never to become a content creator. That was never the goal. I never wanted that to grow. I wasn't making these movies and then putting thousands of hours into the SEO of them, for example. I was literally just filming, editing, uploading them with no other thought other than like maybe giving it a catchy title and thumbnail. So I think that really influenced the way that I approached it in that way, because I truly had no expectation for what the vlog would be that day. So if there was something really cool and exciting that day, then that was great. Then that made it really easy for me to film and edit something. But if there wasn't, then it was just a case of like, all right, well, what have I been thinking about today? What's been the through line in my head today? Like, for example, some days I'll have been thinking about my own motivation and how I push myself to achieve goals. And then so that vlog that day would inevitably take the form or the shape of whatever it was I was thinking that day. And of course, there were days where I had absolutely nothing. And those days usually ended up being me talking about a show that I'd recently watched, or an idea that I'd recently had, or really anything along those lines. That's pretty much how it worked for me. It was just zero expectations and just allowing myself to be creative in the most raw sense, I guess.
Yeah, you seem to find creative ways to have those rest days, to have those moments, because I think there's a couple of times where you went well. Like I think you had COVID one of the times, which isn't ideal, and then just being sick another day. So those, I mean, I wouldn't have even wanted to be on camera ill, but to have those 3 minutes of just saying, "Yeah, no vlog today," but I'm not, here's this is it.
Yeah.
To find those moments must have been difficult at times, but also having just to accept that that's, we're human, that's life. We get sick.
Yeah, and I think that was really important for me, is because I was coming at it from the aspect of it being genuinely just a catalog of my life for that year. Sickness is a part of that. That's something that we all
Yeah,
experience. So I'm not gonna come on camera and lie and be like, "Hey, I feel amazing. Here's a 10-minute vlog of me doing all these things." It's like, no, I spent the whole day on the couch. Like, obviously, I can't do anything today.
yeah,
And I think that's a really important part of what I was doing. And I really do, like, looking back on it, I see it as a lot more of an art project than I did while I was doing it. Like it's now been 4 months since I finished the
yeah,
daily vlog. And so now that I'm looking back, it's like, wow, that really was just a genuine catalog of my daily life for a year. And it wasn't an attempt at sensationalizing my daily life. It was just like in the most raw sense, it was like, here's my life. This is it. Like, just handing that to the viewer. And I think that was really cool, but that was also that really important part of it for me. Like, by taking those rest days, making it clear to people that that's okay. Like, yeah, sure, I'm making these every single day, and it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and that's really cool. But it's also okay to take a day off if you are genuinely sick. And I think that was kind of the thing that influenced those decisions, to just have those very genuine moments of, here's me on the couch for 3.5 minutes, and I just crushed a season of the new Jeffrey Dahmer show in like 8 hours.
Maybe I caught that one, but yeah, it's the whole vlog is kind of very genuine and very very positive in that sense, but also having those moments. I guess it's a good exercise in seeing what happens in daily life. And you mentioned motivation is discipline in disguise. Do you still think that, and do you want to just talk about that for just a split second, then we'll move on to other things?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, that was kind of the guiding principle of the daily vlog for me, was that idea of motivation is just discipline in display in disguise. That's an idea that really came to me in those first 100 days, and it was, I think, the first time that I mentioned it might have been on Crambles, on a podcast that my friend Sam Rees ran, and basically the whole idea behind it is that everyone kept coming up to me and asking me, how do you have the motivation to do a daily vlog? How are you so motivated? How are you so excited all the time? How do you have all these ideas? And I really sat with that for a while, because the truth was that, like, I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where this came from. I just, one day I started and I haven't stopped. Like, that was really the extent of how much I'd thought about it. And then I kind of broke it down more and more. And it really did come down to that idea of, I wasn't motivated. There were days where I just had zero motivation whatsoever to create the daily vlog, but I just, my level of not wanting to make the vlog was always lower than my level of not wanting to break the streak that I'd had. So it became a really easy value proposition of being like, okay, well, I could stop today, but then I've broken the 178-day streak that I've made to this point, and that would suck significantly more. So it was never really a choice for me, I guess, in that way.
Yeah. And what did it feel like when Cody did share your 100 days? Because that's how I found you. Then I went back to the beginning and watched them all. So, I mean, that 100-day video is almost like a music video in a way, and you show behind the scenes later.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know. It was very strange. I didn't really expect anything like that to happen. That's that early in the vlog. 'Cause like I said, it was never intended to be a way to have people watch it. It was never built for YouTube, really. I would have genuinely been just as happy filming and editing them and just putting them on my hard drive and never uploading them. So in that regard, it was really interesting when Cody shared it, because it became this moment of like, oh, people are seeing this. Like, the numbers are actual people, and some of those people are people that I really respect. And that was a very weird moment for me. That moment, actually, specifically with Cody, came about because I was just on Twitter, which I never am. I literally never use Twitter, and it happened to fall on day 99 or something. And I saw Cody post a tweet about his experience with the daily vlog, because he'd finished it well before that, and he just happened to post, I think it was a thread, something like that. I can't really remember specifically, but it happened to fall like right before I hit the 100th day. And I'd already made all these plans for what the 100th day vlog was going to look like, with like that whole music video idea, like you said. And so once that was filmed and edited and uploaded, I was just like, I just threw it up on Twitter and I was like, hey, Cody, I just made this, like, have a look if you want.
Yeah.
I didn't really expect anything of it because, you never do with social media. And then he ended up sharing it, and that came with an influx of people. And it was a really cool experience. I think that was really the first moment where I was like, oh, people are actually watching. They're not just a number on a screen. That was really, really weird.
Yeah, because a lot of people were saying that your growth isn't that quick, but it was steadily going up. It was not that it wasn't moving; it was moving. It's just everyone expects it's going to be tens of thousands, but the fact that you got to, it was just after the vlog happened, but you got to the thousands after that, it means it's very positive, but that's not the reason why you're doing it. So
no, it really is only now in the last 3 or 4 months that I'm very seriously like trying to build an audience, and that's really my goal now, is building that sense of community. And I'm seeing that return in the growth as well. No, it's really interesting to look back and see how much growth there was during the daily vlog, given that wasn't the point at all.
And do you feel like the daily vlog influenced your life or vice versa, because you moved country and you didn't know that was going to happen, and there's loads of other things? Was the vlog an influence of that, with just the fact that you're doing filmmaking and you're learning about your fitness regime and all that within the vlog, or was that just life happening?
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard question, because I can't really definitively say whether or not it made a difference. It's like saying to a runner, if you think that starting to run changed their life. It's like, yeah, I guess, but maybe that would have happened in a different way as well. Maybe I would have, started running anyway last year, and that would have given me the discipline that I needed to make the decision to move countries. So it's kind of interesting in that way, but I would say ultimately, yeah, absolutely. The daily vlog really allowed me to prove to myself what I'm capable of, in a very real sense. It made me ask some really difficult questions to myself, about who I am and what I want to do and what I want to create. The daily vlog is what gave me the idea to do harder and more difficult things. And I don't think without it, I would have made the decision to move countries. And I made that decision far earlier than it looks like in the vlog. I mean, I made that decision in April last year. So I was on day like 100. I was on day 125 or something like that. So I was well into the vlog, but not even close to the stuff that I would learn, later on in that journey. But yeah, I think ultimately without the vlog, I would have moved countries anyway, but I don't think that I would be the person that I am or making the content that I'm making now.
You went into it wanting to become a better filmmaker, and do you think that's happened? Because the content you're putting out now is arguably very layered and very, all the graphics, and there's definitely, it's like the vlog, you've still got your energy and your personality there, but it's just so much more production because you have more time. So I think you returned a lot sooner than you expected. So did you find that routine going, you felt like you wanted to create sooner? And then, what's the content like now, basically, is what I'm trying, that question is trying to be.
well, so I took the break that I'd planned. I'd planned a 2-week break after the completion of the vlog, and I did end up doing that. And I found in that time that I was kind of going a little bit insane. After a year of doing something every day, like you get to a point where it just becomes so natural that you don't think about that routine anymore. So I found myself doing activities in those 2 weeks where I kept picking up a camera and going to talk, and then being like, oh, I don't need to do that. And so it kind of got to a point where I was like, oh, you know what, I'm just going to do it anyway. And see what happens. And then that's how that return video ended up happening. And as for the stuff that I'm doing now, it's absolutely it's super heavily informed by what I learned from the vlog. I mean, I wouldn't be able to create the stuff I'm doing now without learning the editing techniques that I learned from the daily vlog. The daily vlog really taught me how to pass footage really quickly and edit really, really quickly. And that's now given me the time to spend more time in programs like After Effects, where I can create graphics. So now I really can compartmentalize a lot better and smash out the base edit, and then spend 2 or 3 days really delving into the graphic side of things. And that really allows me to elevate. And I'm learning After Effects. I'm learning better sound design at the moment. So it's really given me the ability and the trust in myself to push myself to that extent, I guess.
You had a couple of videos that did really well because they were about life modeling. And did you feel like that was, well, one, because of the title having nudity within it, but also what does that feel like when you first did that? Because I've been drawing models for about 17 years now, and I've started doing a little bit of my own, and realizing how amazing models are, because it's a very difficult, and people take for granted how difficult it is to stay still and to not have any distractions, and to be in that meditative space, and to be a good model and come up with interesting poses and things. So one, how did that come about? Because I think it was a colleague or friend of yours in the fence space. We'll talk more about that later. And how the learning to be comfortable with it and the poses come about.
Yeah. Well, it came about well before the daily vlog. This would have been probably October or November 2021. And at the time I was climbing at a gym called 9 Degrees in Brisbane in Australia. And a friend of mine there worked there, and she was telling me all about how she was starting this new life drawing modeling company, and it was like with a couple of her friends from uni, and it was this really cool thing. She was showing me all these photos of like the first couple events that they'd done, and it was just a very casual conversation. Like there was nothing behind it for her. She ended up talking about how she was having issues finding male models. How a lot of the people that were applying were either young females or older men who may or may not have had some ulterior motives for coming into a life drawing session and wanting to pose nude. And so it kind of came to a point where I was like, oh, well, if you ever really need someone, like, let me know, and I'd be more than happy to do it. I'm not really like worried about that in any way. And she was like, oh, well, could you do it in like 3 weeks? And I was like, okay, sure. And so it was zero experience, zero information. I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll just like show up. And so I spent 2 weeks frantically Googling like, how do you be a life model? And so like that was kind of the beginning of that. And so I did that for the first time, probably start of December 2021. And it was a really it was a fantastic experience. I had no idea what I was doing, but I felt really supported and guided by Studio Maverick, the studio that she created, her friend Franny. So that was a really interesting experience. And I kind of just thought nothing of it. I was like, yeah, that was cool, but I don't know if I'll ever do it again. Really did feel like a once-off favor. Then I started the daily vlog start of 2022, and I was doing that for a little bit. And then she ended up approaching me again and was like, oh, we have a couple sessions here and here if you'd be interested. And I didn't really think about it. And I was like, all right, sure, whatever, let's do it. And so that's how kind of how that started, and how that first life drawing modeling vlog began. And I mean, to a certain extent, like I knew that video was going to do better than other ones, because sex sells. It always does.
Same with mine. If I'm drawing a nude model, then they do quite well. So
yeah, exactly. It's just a thing. It's the same reason that like my barefoot shoes movie did better, because my feet are in the thumbnail. Like it's you don't you don't really think about, but you don't want to think about it too much, but it's obviously gonna happen. And I really like that, those vlogs, those life drawing vlogs. I really tried to approach with the same level of respect that they approached me with, and I just really wanted to share my experience and how it really felt and how it worked, because obviously I was still very new to the space as well. I had no idea what was happening or how to do it, and I kind of wanted to share that journey in the same way that I'd been sharing my journey with everything else in the daily vlog. But it was also that was probably one of the first times with the vlog where I felt like I had a sense of responsibility over how I was portraying it, because it's very easy to get an idea of life modeling and think that it's this sexualized thing. And it was very important to me that that wasn't the case, because it's not a sexualized thing. It's very wholesome, for lack of a better word. It really is a very comfortable space with very lovely people, and they're just there to learn, and you're their muse for that evening, and that's a really humbling and rewarding experience. But yeah, that's kind of how I tried to approach those life drawing modeling vlogs, and obviously they did well. And I'm still super proud of them. They're really great movies.
Yeah, and the way you've cleverly sort of shown the angles and stuff, and a lot of artistic license. And for those who are starting out with modeling, would you have any advice for how to pick poses and things? Does it have to be more your natural how you would pose, or just look up whatever like famous statues and famous artworks I've done in the past?
Actually, I took a fairly non-traditional approach, I think, because I did look up poses online. And I looked up how other people were doing it, but I was looking at them, and I honestly, like, I don't remember things very easily. Like, I really
Normally.
do need to write things down and have things next to me, and so I knew that I wasn't going to be able to remember those poses again. So what I did was I ended up figuring out a couple poses that I could fall back on should I need them. So I had 3 or 4 like backup poses, and then otherwise between, like, when I was moving between poses, I would just move in a flowy way, I guess would be the best way to describe it. And then once I felt like I'd hit a position that I could hold or something that looked visually interesting, then I would just pause in that position. I'd hold that for that time. But I also was very privileged in that I've come from a photography background and an arts background. You know, I didn't finish it, but I did a section in an arts degree where we studied a lot of Western art and history of Western art and things like that. And I've grown up in art galleries, and I've been very lucky to travel a lot throughout my life. So I have quite a good basis in art, composition, posing, things like that. So I recognize that I come at it from a very privileged point of view, would be the right way to say it. So that definitely informed those decisions. So I think if you are wanting to become a better life model or wanting to do it for the first time, I think just trust yourself, trust your instinct. And if you're really worried, just look at some old paintings.
Yeah. And have you ever had a pose where you thought, this is great, this is amazing, and you look at the drawings and go, oh, I've had that happen where I thought it was a really good pose, and then you look at it and
No,
go, actually, that
I
angle
don't think
wasn't.
so. Yeah, I don't think I've ever had that experience. I also because I've obviously come at it from a different point of view with life modeling. It was always more about the experience for me rather than the end result. So whatever that end result looked like was fine.
Yeah.
And I think that was also that was partly to do with the environment that I was in, because the environment there at Studio Maverick is very supportive and loving and kind. And so a lot of it is about just being there with that group of people and allowing yourself to be in that moment. And, you know, yeah, of course, sometimes you see a drawing afterwards and you're like, oh, that's not quite how I had envisioned that pose in my head. But it's still amazing, and they've still learned something from it. Like, we're not perfect beings. Human beings aren't perfect in any way, shape, or form. And we're going to pose in ways that aren't natural, and that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, I like trying to push the envelope and trying to go beyond natural, but then sometimes it's good to have a nice natural pose and have it being just you in natural pose sometimes.
Yeah.
One more question about the life drawing. Has there ever been times where you felt uncomfortable being in that space? I mean, obviously, Studio Maverick seems like a really comfortable space, like loads of the ones I've been at, but there are times where you suddenly think, oh, I haven't got any clothes on, and this particular situation, but then most places are fine.
Of course, yeah, of course you're gonna have that moment. I think there was a couple times where you kind of realize, like, oh, I'm naked in a room full of people. That's cool, awesome. There was one specific experience I had where I was modeling for a private event. So this is outside of my experience with Studio Maverick. And I was modeling for a private event for it was a fundraiser for some other like middle-aged charity event, something like that. It was like middle-aged women were riding a bike from coast to coast, something like that. And so it was a very large group of middle-aged women, and obviously that comes with different expectations, and I hadn't really thought about that. And I think being in that environment, I felt a lot more like a male stripper, which is obviously not the vibe that you're going for when you're a life drawing model. And, you know, obviously no shade to strippers in any way, shape, or form, but going into that environment expecting a life drawing modeling experience and then getting that back from those women was obviously a very confronting experience. And I ended up, it was fine. Like nothing happened. There was no issues whatsoever. I ended up being able to manage expectations, and it had very like comfortable evening. But just having that moment of like, oh, okay, these women expect something different from me than what I'm used to at Studio Maverick.
Or it's just that tongue in cheek where I've had a lot of life drawing classes where it's very quiet and you hear scribbles and a bit of little chatter. And I've had others where people are very vocal about their struggles with the drawing or what happened last week, and you're thinking, it's a nice environment, but it's just not what I'm used to. So, but actually, I like this. I like both. I like it. They're just different experiences, and you have social and you have the other stuff. So, yeah, and
Yeah.
it's interesting that. But yeah, no one knows what life models actually go through because they're holding in place for that long. But it's also very enjoyable having new ways to move your body and things like that. So yeah, I've always had that experience. I wasn't sure when to put this tangent in, but I was thinking we're both fans of The Last of Us, so and you're a storyteller. So I was wondering, what was it about The Last of Us that really captivated you with that story? And did you analyze it in a slightly different way later, having, why does that work? And obviously one of your tattoos is sort of homage to that. And was there a particular moment was connected to your own storytelling?
Well, The Last of Us has been a very important part of my life for a very long time now, actually. Interestingly enough, I'm very excited to be able to talk about this, actually. So I played the Last of Us games, actually. I first played the Last of Us 1 probably in 2016, 2015, somewhere.
Mine was 2018.
And it blew me away. I absolutely loved it, and it blew my mind in many ways. And it ended up becoming very important to me. And then, without going into too much detail, in 2016, 2017, my mother ended up having some health complications, so I ended up playing that through that a lot. And she's fine now. Ended up playing The Last of Us through that a lot. And then later in life, in 2019, 2020, my grandfather started having some health complications, and my mother ended up having to go overseas to the Netherlands, where I am now, to go care for him. And then I played through the Last of Us games with my father. So it's kind of been one of those things that has always been a part of my experience, which is why I ended up getting the tattoo of the Last of Us, which is this one, in case you haven't seen it.
You might have to stop a little bit. The internet's going a bit mad, but I can hear you fine.
I will freeze for you.
There we go.
There we go. So I got that tattoo. It's a reimagining of Ellie's tattoo in The Last of Us 2. And so obviously when I heard that they were making a TV show, I was absolutely stoked. Because it's such an important piece of media for me. Then my immediate second thought was like, oh, I really hope they don't mess this up.
And what did you think of it? I thought for the most part it was good, but I've got a few ideas. So
I think it's impossible for me to have an objective point of view on the show. I think if I was to remove my own bias, I'd probably end up at like an 8.5, 9 out of 10. But for me, it's just a solid 10 out of 10 show. I can't give an objective review on it, really.
Yeah, I mean, I'll probably go for like a 9, because just I reckon it needed 2 more episodes just to keep it feel more like a journey with Joel and Ellie, and have a few moments of the relationship building. But other than that, I mean, it made me net to some levels better, because that scene when they're having a shootout with Joel, I hadn't really thought about it in the game as being a moment, and then when I played it, it's like, I feel like I'm in the film set now, even though I've played the game before. Like having it recreated to that precision was, it made me love the game more. So I don't know if you had that experience, if you've replayed it, or whether you've just seen moments and thought, that's the game.
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely some moments where I was like, yep, that's 1 for 1.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, hang on, sorry, I've flicked off a little bit. I think we're good now.
Yeah, we're good.
I think I heard that last little bit, the 1-to-1 to the game. I think that was really interesting that there were sections that were the exact same, and I think that was really rewarding for me that's played through them a lot. But I also liked how they handled it, in that they added new sections and really expanded on some of their relationships. I don't know. I think it was it's probably the best version of what they could have made. I think
so.
As much as I would have liked an extra episode, I don't think it would have ultimately added anything to the story.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have been talking to a lot of podcast guests, and also I had a really heavy fitness session last night, and my lungs have just, I don't know. Anyway, I'm a bit croaky. But I think the science they put into The Last of Us show, particularly the first episode, and then the other scientists when she was in the surgery room, I think that really added to it, because I hadn't realized that the original game does mention the cordyceps, but it doesn't really heavily. I don't know. The show felt like that was more of a premise and a more of So that was amazing depth to it. I think that the show could do that the game couldn't.
Definitely added something with that. Yeah,
not much to say really. It's adaptation.
No, it was just great. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's a solid show. I love it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this episode will be coming out a bit later, so probably all the talk of the trend will be gone. So I'm not doing it for that reason. I just love the show. You talk a lot about your climbing in the vlog, and I used to climb probably. Well, I don't look that old, but hopefully. But when I was your age, I was climbing quite heavily. And you still doing that now? You're in the Netherlands. Have you found? Because actually, you climbed with your cousin, didn't you? So there are gyms around. You found any outdoor places?
I haven't been climbing. No, I haven't been climbing quite as much as I'd like to be. I've honestly been focusing a little bit more on my running and my endurance sport at the moment.
Okay,
because that aligns with my goals a little bit more.
You got a marathon coming up, have you? Is that right?
Yeah. So I'm shooting for a half. Yeah, I'm shooting for a half marathon in June and a full marathon at the end of the year. So I'm kind of really like heavily focused on those goals. Yeah. So I'm focused on those at the moment. And then eventually I'll get back to climbing, but we'll see.
Yeah, and then you've got the alpine training. That's why partly why you moved, also to be closer to family, I guess. But how's that fit in with the marathon? Is that going to be like the goal, just to keep, take that off your list, and then does the training start after that for the alpine?
And, well,
beyond.
So what I kind of realized is that I needed a lot more base fitness. So doing this half marathon, this year, and then next year I want to run an ultra marathon. So it's kind of building up that aerobic capacity, and then from that base, I can really start doing more alpine specific stuff. But it's just I have to learn that. I have to build that up, and I need time to be able to really implant myself in that community, I guess, and allow myself time to get sponsors and have it be paid for, because I can't afford to climb all these mountains right now, unfortunately. So it's kind of it's the best of both worlds right now. I'm doing what I can with what I have, and then hopefully eventually I'll have what I need to achieve bigger goals.
Did you get round to reading Bear Grylls' book yet, the Mud, Sweat and Tears? Because he mentions how
I haven't.
He was in the same position. He wanted to get sponsored, and I think he's one of the youngest. I think he's like 23, 24. I think when he read the book, I can't remember, but he was looking for sponsorship, and he went around and had to make it worth their while. So he went through all of that. I'm not such a fan of the TV personality, like Bear Grylls drinking urine, and that's stuff we know him of in a way, which is not a great legacy in some ways. But if you read the book, it's all about his SAS training and the first Everest trip, and so you get to see like a different side to what we know as a TV survivor. So, but
I mean, Bear Grylls was one of like my main influences as a kid. Like I watched him relentlessly. It was like him and Steve Irwin that I watched. And I think looking back, like Bear Grylls is one of the main people that got me really interested in like actually exploring the outdoors. So I mean, in that regard, his sensationalism in his show and that very over the top, like I'm gonna drink my own piss, is like, yeah, cool. I'm in.
Do you have plans for like where the future of your content's going to be taking you? Because obviously the graphics are coming in, and that, but I'm guessing you've got a few big projects on the horizon that you haven't told anyone, which you don't have to say in the podcast, but you can just confirm whether there are any.
I mean, next? It's both. So it's a little bit loosey goosey at the moment. I'm not going to lie to you. I have long-term plans, and I have some mid-term plans. But the short-term goals at the moment are very much changing week by week. I'm moving towards this more infotainment style of content because that's the stuff that I find interesting, right? Like I'm very, very interested in the scientific side of how physical activity works, and how our bodies work, and how we can optimize our bodies to be better at their jobs. Like that's just the stuff that I find interesting. And if I can distill that and explain that in a way that makes it engaging and exciting for the average person, then I've won. Like if that's the content that I can create, like my last movie, my Habits movie, is I'm just so insanely proud of that movie, and it's probably my favorite thing that I've ever made. And if I can keep making stuff like that then builds upon itself and allows me to have these bigger and larger and more exciting adventures with the same core principles of education and entertainment, then I'll be the happiest person alive. Like that's exactly what I want to do. Even with the larger goals, like even with climbing Everest and things like that, the goal is obviously to climb the mountains, but it's also to spread awareness and education of conservation and climate conservation and things like that within those areas, so that they can remain open and explorable by future generations. That we're not the last people that get to go on these adventures. That's something that's really important to me. Yeah, I mean, I guess in the grand scheme of things, that's kind of where I'm moving towards with my content. It's very much educating and entertaining and a little bit of crazy.
Yeah, because a lot of science comes into that. And where do you find those scientific stories? Is it stuff you've come across, or is it just looking through books and internet? And yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, books, a lot of reading, a lot of research. It's something that I've neglected about myself for a while, with the daily vlog and what I was doing, but I'm very, very good at research. Like that's something that I'm really learning about myself, and it's something that I genuinely really enjoy. So being able to like allow myself, I've set the schedule now, to create one video a week. And so I have one day off, which is Monday, and then Tuesday and Wednesday. So 2 full days are for research and script preparation. And then I've got 1 day of filming and 3 days of editing. So you can kind of see how like the work is divided there.
Yeah.
So like that's kind of where I'm at now. But yeah, a lot of research is where I'm at right now.
Well, it really pays off because you get to hear about all these obscure scientific studies and stories, and obviously the graphics and the storytelling brings it to life. So that's really paid off. Just thinking, we haven't talked about the event space yet, and how there's a lot of art shows and things that you filmed. And what was that experience like? And you buy art yourself, so you're saying artists need to get paid, which I obviously agree with. So yeah, maybe talk a bit more about that space and that philosophy and how you would like it to be.
Well, for context, Vent Space is an artist community hub and artist space in Brisbane, in South Bank. Beautiful place. I ended up finding it at the end of 2021 as a place for Joe and I to shoot the podcast and edit the podcast there. And that was they'd been open for 3 months then. I think they opened in August 2021. So I ended up going through that just completely by chance by a friend of mine. And it really is this beautiful combination of space for artists to work and paint and edit and shoot, and this beautiful event space where people can put on art shows and music shows and do all of these crazy things that I think is incredible. And so that's kind of the gist of it. It's essentially a community hub and art space. So I would try to go to as many shows as possible. At a certain point you end up becoming friends with everyone because you're always there, and there's like 32 artists in a small vicinity. So you end up naturally just like getting to know these people. And so, every weekend I'd be at these shows, and then at a certain point I just started buying their art. I've always been surrounded by artists. But then, when you're young and your friends are artists, they're obviously still learning. They're still in the very early stages of their career. So they're doing it, and then they show you their art and you're like, that's really cool. And then they're like, do you want to buy it? And you're like, let me think about it. And then after a couple of years, they've kind of like evolved and they've grown and actually have a really solid art practice now. And on a technical level, their art is good now as well. And then you're like, oh hell yeah, like I will pay $150 for that painting. Absolutely, like literally no question whatsoever. You know, at a certain level was not very great for my bank account or my wallet. But I did end up accumulating quite a lovely collection of art from all my
Yeah.
friends or people that I know, which I think is incredibly valuable, and is currently sitting in a suitcase at my parents' place in
Mm.
Australia, which I'll probably get in 3 to 5 years.
It'll go up in value
But
by that point. It's fine.
that's it, exactly. But yeah, no, I think it's really important to have spaces like that and have communities like that where you can really discuss ideas with each other and get to know each other and just be young creatives, you know,
Yeah.
like that the age range in that building was, you know, very much skewed towards early 20s just because of its location and the circles that it inhabits in the art space. So it was really rewarding for me to be in that space and be able to bounce ideas off of these people. And you know, a big advantage of that was if you ever needed anything, you could just go like 2 doors down and be like, "Hey, I really need this." You know, actually made a documentary
Yeah.
for Vent Space, a short documentary. I think it's 15 minutes. Worked my butt off for it, but you know, for that movie, I was like, "Oh, I really need title cards. Like, I'd love to have some like really cool like collagey title cards for that movie." And then I ended up being like, "Oh, my friend Molly like does that. She does collage stuff. I wonder if she does animation too. Some collage stuff for me." So you know, that was kind of the greatest advantage for me was just the ease of access to all of these really talented artists.
They kind of became characters in the vlog because they were there. Was there ever a point where someone didn't want to be in the vlog, or how did you like approach that? So it's saying, "I'm doing the vlog. You know, I see you all the time, so I'd love you to be in it." And I guess same with your parents as well, because they have made a few appearances in the vlog as well and very supportive of it. So we kind of going putting this at the end, which should have been at the beginning, but how that conversation go down? Was it always going to be evolving everyone?
Yeah. Um, so here's the thing, right? Like I never really asked. It
Yeah, they ask
was,
us forgiveness later. Yeah,
yeah,
even with
I
friends and family,
mean,
it seems.
yeah, it was kind of just a case of like I would just film. To me, it was no different to people putting things on social media, right? Like when you're out to dinner with your friends and they pull out their phone to film dinner and all of you and they put it in their story, that's the same thing, you know. They're
Oh,
still putting that out to an audience of people that you don't know. So that's kind of how I rationalized in my head, which is probably not particularly healthy, but uh,
yeah, I've not had that experience of people filming and putting it on social media. Oh,
yeah, no, that was very much the circles that I was in. And yeah, there were a couple people that, you know, they don't outright say it, but you can tell that they're not particularly comfortable like being in the vlog or that they're being filmed. And, you know, sometimes, you know, I would have moments where I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna put it in anyway. But most of the time I would cut it or I would not have it or I'd not film them. And, you know, I kind of make a mental note of that and be like, all right, that person, you know, doesn't interact well with the camera or isn't interested or doesn't like that. There was definitely like I think of the people in vent space, like, the vlog probably saw maybe 12 or 13 of them of the 32. So there were just a lot of people that either like I didn't feel close enough to be able to do that, or I knew personally weren't particularly comfortable with that idea.
a question I ask all my guests is around putting yourself out there. So for those who are maybe wanting to start filmmaking, or putting their work out there and to get better and maybe get a bit disillusioned with the whole social media and putting it out there, what advice would you give them in terms of getting into creating something? And most people have that drive, but sometimes we hit that brick wall.
Yeah. Well, I think the easiest thing that I can say is that don't feel pressure to put it anywhere.
Yeah.
Make a few things that you're proud of and feel free to just hold on to them. Just keep them. Lord knows that I have more than enough movies that I've made that have never seen the light of day. And that's fine, you know, like that's part of the creative process. And the most important thing I think to remember is that creativity is always going to be a you first process. It's always going to be about you and for you. So if you're getting to a point where you start creating things for a group of people, for a person or for an audience, then you're going to lose the joy and the spark that you found in creating that in the first place. If specifically it is about I'm making all of this creative stuff and I'm too afraid to share it with people, but I really want to, then it's a case of then, just either forcing yourself to upload it somewhere or see if you could find someone else that can help you. I mean, I have a group of people that I get to look at my stuff before I upload it and check it out and get advice. And, I think that's just as important. So if you can send it to a friend first and let them validate you and be like, yeah, this is good and this can be uploaded online, then you'll probably have the confidence to be like, all right, yeah, I'll upload it. If that's still not the case, then you can probably ask that person to be like, hey, can you please upload this for me? And then they'll do it for you.
So yeah, it's been an absolutely brilliant talking to you. We've been talking on Instagram, and I've been probably quite a few messages. So to actually be able to talk in a natural space, it's been great. But to honour your time, we're just coming up to the end of that. But is there anything you want to add before we go? Is there anything that's sort of about what you do and things like this birding that you haven't said on the podcast yet?
No, I think honestly, it really does just come down to the idea that motivation is just discipline in disguise. That's what I come to every single time, and it really is. It's just incredibly true. If you don't feel like you have the motivation for something, you just need to build a system where you can have the discipline to do it. So just start a streak, don't break it, keep going, keep creating, keep investing in your creativity, never stop evolving. And always learn new skills. The space is constantly growing and changing, and if you stay in one place, you're going to die. So keep moving, keep growing, keep evolving, and I can't wait to see some incredible creators pop up over the next 2 to 5 years.
I love that, and that kind of says what I always end my podcast. The words I use a lot better than what I do. So what I say is keep scribbling, pick up that camera, get past perfectionism, and just keep creating, keep evolving. And that's where the ideas come from. Put the bad ideas to one side and just keep going. Yeah,
that's it. Absolutely.
So yeah, thanks for talking to me today, Frank. And so I've been Extemporary Art, aka Chris, and this has been Frank Menken, filmmaker, storyteller. So where can people find you? Where's the best place to get hold of you?
Literally, just Google my name. Everything's on YouTube. If you contact me, you can do email, on Instagram. Go hectic.
Yeah, and all the details will be in the description with Frank's links. So go and check it out because you've got 365 days to catch up on. Yeah. Plus all the new all the new content as well. So yeah, thank you, and yeah, bye to everyone listening at home. Thanks for listening as always, and I'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Nice, starting.
I'll just press stop recording.